Okay, so I'm going to jump in. There's a lot of content here. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Peters, CEO, co-founder of Construction Robotics. Today we're going to talk about the MULE method, how we work with contractors to build safer and faster. And so there's a lot of content here. Hopefully it's educational, and there'll be opportunities for Q&A at the end. If you have questions, feel free, you can jump on and ask, or send them in via the chat in the lower right. Okay, so the agenda, what we're going to cover is, I'm going to start with a basic MULE overview. So for those who are less familiar with the MULE, we'll go through the basics very quickly and high level. Then we're going to break down a few MULE myths, a few things we hear as people start to understand the technology and how to use it. Try to address a couple of those things head on, and then we'll really spend most of the time, hopefully, on the MULE method here, where we talk about how to achieve really some amazing results, unbelievable success with the MULE by improving production and safety at the same time. Happy, healthy team is really what we're all about here. And production or success is really defined by the contractor, defined by the job, defined by the team. There's a lot of different things that means depending on the job site. So we'll talk about some of that stuff. But really the 5 steps of the MULE method, is kind of pre-job layout and planning, the production success plan, aligning your men or your people, your machines, your materials, working with the team on mindset and on-site buy-in, and then the continuous improvement portion, which inevitably is what will drive productivity increases. So we'll touch on all those today and give you real-life examples, give you tips and tricks on how to take advantage of those to see results on your jobs using the MULE. So the MULE overview, the basics of the MULE. What is the MULE? Material Unit Lift Enhancer. It is an acronym. Smart Lift Assist is the phrase that we like to use, which is really making heavy objects feel weightless, and just by pushing on that material. So with one finger, you can take an 80-pound block and float it up, float it down, in really any direction in space, horizontally, vertically. And that allows us to really rethink how we plan jobs. And that's what a lot of today is going to talk about. So example of a MULE in action, you can see here, this is our ML150 product. I'll talk about the products in a second, but allows you to float that block. You can reach out, you can pick a block, it immediately floats. You could swing it around in space, and then as you go into the wall, it won't drop it heavily into the mortar. You can push it down, set gently into the mortar, hit a button, it'll slowly release that product, making it very natural and easy to work with, quick to learn, and very smooth to operate when you're in the field installing masonry units. Today we have 2 versions of the MULE. We have the ML150, which has been out there for quite a few years. We have the MZ100, which has been out there for a little over a year, or about a year and a half. And so both products are available. And really the difference between them, the ML150 has 150-pound capacity that is expandable now to 200 pounds. We have a bunch of off-the-shelf gripper options. I'll touch on those in a second. We also can do custom grippers, and we have an air compressor on board. It is 110 powered unit, so you can plug it into a generator, house power. The MZ100 is really a new machine from a technology standpoint, battery powered, so fully battery powered machine, 100-pound lifting capacity, and it has 3 arms. So those 3 arms allow you to get into some tighter spaces and operate around more obstacles. That lithium battery that's in there will operate about 30 hours of runtime on a job site. So pretty impressive. It charges up in just a matter of 3-4 hours. And then the IoT data is also available on the MZ100, and I'll talk about why that's valuable here near the end of the presentation. And then innovative lifting belt really reduces rebar interference. So one of the things you see is on the ML150, there's a coil cord where we run data and air down to the controller. On the MZ100, that's gone. And that allows us to get tighter to the ceiling and allows us to have less interferences when you're in confined, tight, or obstructive spaces. So the grippers that are available for the ML150, we've got standard CMU grippers. We have a modular gripper that'll pick just about anything. We have veneer grippers for veneer stones. We have hooks, and we've done a whole array of custom grippers as well, vacuum grippers and many other applications. So a lot of, it doesn't even show the number of grippers that we have, but a lot of different flexibility. We talk a lot about if you have a material that's kind of that 200 pounds or under, we can lift it, we can find a way to pick it, move it, float it, and help save backs and bodies. The MZ100, we have two grippers available today. We have the standard modular gripper. What that means is that we have different center spines, and so those grippers actually, those cams can move in and out and adjust to the width of the material you're picking up. And we have a veneer gripper now for the MZ100 as well. So fingers on the backside that allows you to place stone veneers into a tight cavity under 1 inch. And then a rubber pad on the front face to not damage the front of your veneer stone. So that's also now available for the MZ100. The bases, most of the bases are universal between the ML150 and MZ100. When we talk about the MULE, it's really kind of the ARM technology, but there's a lot of different ways to integrate mules onto your job site. We have ground setups. We have deck straps for mounting them to the decks of mast climbers. We have wheel carts, mast adapters to mount directly to the masts of them. We have scaffold rail systems made by a number of manufacturers at this point. We have an RT mount where you can rent an RT scissor lift or buy an RT scissor lift and mount the MULE directly into it, either the MZ or the ML. And we have some newly developed track bases that we've integrated, we've partnered with some companies on. And so you can see in that picture in the lower right, that is a self-leveling track base that you can drive through rough terrain and the MULE stays level, and you can install materials, whether it's SRW block, whether it's fence block, whatever that material is, makes it really, really easy to utilize in the field. All right, so what problems are we solving with this technology? Really the three primary problems we talk often about, the problems that face the industry, the labor challenges, that could be recruitment, that could be extending the careers, it could be, the cost of labor. Those are really, big labor challenges. Health and safety is another major component. When you spend your career lifting block to your shoulders, it's gonna take its toll on your body. And at some point, throughout Mason's careers, they're going to have back surgery, they're going to have shoulder surgery, they're going to be out for a period of time. That takes a toll on your business because there's a cost, there's insurance premium costs, there's costs of them being out, there's costs of losing high quality workers. And so health and safety is a huge piece that the MULE just changes the game on. And then productivity, I think when you look at the construction industry, it's historically struggled from lagging productivity gains that other industries have seen, and I think construction is constantly looking for those productivity advantages. Masonry in particular, I think is also part of that is looking for productivity opportunities, and so this is where we can leverage the MULE to increase productivity, and I'll explain a little bit more how we do that as we go. All right, so why would you consider smart lifting? Workforce, like I just talked about, ergonomics, productivity, and schedule. Those are the main drivers. Your front careers, keeping people working who've had injuries, attracting new talent in the industry. We have example after example of how the MULE has positively impacted all of those. And then from a productivity standpoint, we've seen increases in productivity. We've also seen where we've been able to take less experienced crews and produce consistent productivity throughout days or even weeks. And ultimately that will help your schedule and allow you to get work done faster. So I want to jump into a couple MULE myths. We'll hit these quick and then hopefully spend a bit of time on the MULE method here. So we do hear a lot, hey, I'll use the MULE when I get the right job. It's in the future. And so we challenge that a little bit to say, really, what is the right job in their mind? And are there good and bad jobs for the MULE? Of course there are. But any job can be successful. We've seen jobs as small as foundations for houses be successful with the MULE. We've seen huge, some of the biggest schools in the country built with the MULE and been very successful. So as far as what the right type of job is, typically when you have materials that are over 40 pounds, you're going to see your largest productivity gains out of the gate. We've seen jobs even with 8-inch block, 30, 25, 30 pound block that have seen productivity gains. And it's all how you approach the job. What are the wrong types of jobs to put the MULE on? I think if you're in very, very tight spaces, or you have very lightweight materials, or you have bad attitudes, and it's probably fairly obvious, but I think attitude is one of the biggest thing that drives success with the MULE, is kind of the team's approach and what they see and what they want to get out of it. So we very much believe that you can achieve success on any type of project with two things: a good plan and a good attitude. And if you show us the job, we'll tell you. I mean, the simple thing is, if you're not sure, if you question it, if you don't know, you come to us and we'll work with you to analyze your job, help you understand how to have happy, healthy productive masons and what kind of expectations you should see on that project. All right, number two, the MULE myth. Number two, it only works with 32-inch block. That when they talk about ROI or productivity and oh, I got to have 32-inch block. Well, the reality is 32-inch block can help ROI. We've seen it. But the truth is that 32-inch block and mules alone do not increase productivity. If you take a job and you drop 32s on there and you drop mules on there and you expect productivity to magically double and go through the roof, it does not happen. If you don't plan for success, just dropping mules and 32s on your project actually will not help you. But if you do plan for success and you look at how you're going to apply it differently, and this is what the MULE method's all about, then you will achieve significant success using 32s or using any other materials. We've had great success projects with stone veneer jobs, split face block, large foundation block, 12-inch block, just regular 12-inch block jobs, tons of success around the country. Insulated block, any material that's kind of over 50 pounds is almost a no-brainer. You can see productivity gains out of the gate. But even 8-inch block, even lighter weight materials, we have seen productivity gains. You just need to optimize your process a little bit more to take advantage of what the MULE can do for you. We'll get into that. From an ROI standpoint, just looking at a 30 block per day increase. So let's say a 12-inch block job and you have a crew of 6, 3 masons, 3 tenders, and you're laying 100 block a day on a 12-inch block or a split face project. And if you just increase that to 130 block a day and you're able to take and manage that same production with a 4-person crew, and not pre-stage material, but pick off the pallet and take advantage of some of the things we talk about in the MULE method, there's a significant savings, over $2 a block, quite a bit over 4 weeks, that you can gain by rethinking how you're going to attack that wall. Allow those those people to be utilized in other areas of the project to help reduce schedules. So there's a lot of benefits that can come when you spend time optimizing. Myth 3 is my team is faster without the MULE, right? So a lot of times masons think they can lay block very fast, and in fact they can, right? When you look at the sprint, the fastest trial in Vegas, the winners put 135 block in the wall in 20 minutes. It'd be great if they could do that all day, every day on a job site, but that's not realistic. Average commercial jobs in the US, they're putting 100 to 200 block in per man. Most job sites, when we look at the data, you're laying block for 10, 20, 30, 40% of the day. Much of the job is really downtime, not actually installing block because of other problems, challenges, and just workflow challenges on a job site. But an experienced mason with a MULE can install block at over 100 block an hour consistently with no fatigue. And so there's two things that really prevent you from laying mind-blowing amounts of block per day. We talk about it's logistics and fatigue, right? Either one, you're just not set up to lay that many block with the people. And even if you did plan that out, you're going to get tired. The MULE can eliminate fatigue, allowing you to focus on logistics so that you can get gains that matter. All right, myth number 4, I've tried the MULE, my productivity didn't increase. And the things we challenge and the things we talk about is that, did you plan your job out? Did your team know what success was? Did your team buy into the MULE and know what their expectations? And like I said before, if you just drop mules on your job with no plan for increasing production, no buy-in from your team, you're not going to see an increase in production. Mules do not increase production. I want to be clear on this. People increase production. Mules are just a tool that allows you to get there safely and really in a better way. Okay, so now we're going to dig into the MULE method. That's kind of a brief intro, and talk about what the MULE method is, some of the tips and tricks that we've seen create success for contractors around the country. So what is the MULE method? It's really, in our mind, a way of thinking, planning, and executing your job. It's a way of thinking about how to manufacture your walls, pre-planning for success, and achieving higher productivity while improving safety on the job site. And productivity, it's really, like I said earlier, it is defined by the contractor, by the job. In some jobs, they're not even looking for an increase in productivity. They want improved safety, or they want to be able to get more done with less, or a less experienced crew achieve the same levels of productivity that they would have expected. In other cases, they want a 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x productivity. And so all of those are great results. Like we are super supportive of any result that the contractor wants to see and is happy with. And so the key is that we understand what that is in the beginning. What the MULE method is not is just dropping mules on the job and building the same way we've always done it. This is taking a deliberate approach to understanding how to take advantage of the MULE technology to get the gains that you want. And we have seen it over and over again around the country and even the world. The gains are absolutely possible, but the game plan, the approach, the attitude, those are the things that create the success. So why does this matter? For the industry, for masonry, for mason contractors, competition, masonry is competing for wall share. Schedules continue to get more and more aggressive, so more production, more schedule, or shorter schedules. Profits, I think the greater profits you can produce, the healthier the masonry company can become. And then labor at the end of the day, I think the ability to extend careers, to not injure people, and to bring new people into the trade is constantly a conversation. For as long as we've been in this industry, many, many, many years, it is always a problem and will be for a while going forward. Just the need to bring new people in the industry, keep them engaged, and keep them part of the industry. And this technology, or technology like this, is going to be what is needed to really make the future workforce successful going forward. And then the MULE method, so really consists of 5 steps, and I covered those in the beginning. Pre-job layout and plan. I'll talk about what's entailed in that and how we can help you there. Production success plan. I talked a little bit about that, and I will dig into it. Alignment of the men, machines, and materials. The mindset and on-site buy-in, and then the continuous improvement. And the first 3 really are what we do before we set foot on a job. And it doesn't need to take weeks, months. It does not need to take a long time to go through those first 3 steps. It's really a couple conversations, and it's making sure that everyone's on the same page and they know what success is, and we have the right buy-in from the right team members. And once we do that, then we see a ton of success. And then the bigger wins happen kind of when we get into steps 4 and 5. Once you get on site and you get the buy-in, you get the continuous improvement, you help everyone understand how to get the big wins. That's where just production continues to climb. So pre-job layout and planning, sticking into that first. So pre-job reviews, CR does offer free project reviews. You can go on our website, click on resources, click on job planning, and just book a time with us. That's the simplest thing we highly recommend. And why do a job analysis? It's the best way to evaluate whether your project is going to work with the mules. What your ROI is, whether they're right for you, what you want to get out of it. I think if you have a project that you're laying block or stone or SRW or any heavy materials, and you don't know whether the mule will help you, you get on a call with us, you show us the drawings, you show us the layout. We can answer whether it's going to work or not, how many mules you need, how you get them, do you rent them, do you lease them, do you buy them, what you do, how you get your hands on it, how to train your team ahead of time. We'll work with you on all of that to basically determine the best way to implement the mules on your job. And I think that from there we can go through drawing the scaffold plan and make recommendations and kind of help you understand what the best ROI is for your project. And if it's not the right project, then we'll let you know, and we'll look for future projects that may work for you. So this is an example of a mule job planning that we've done where we'll take a hydromobile layout or a mass climbing scaffold layout, and we'll actually overlay mules on there to look at where we would place mules, how far apart they are, what the loading, what the capacities are on the scaffold, and what the loading constraints are with other things such as hoists or material landing spots. And in that case, we can help you determine material flow. We can help you determine where the mules would be, and then help you figure out the number of people. So it all kind of ties together, and you have a game plan on how to approach that. In other cases, we've done more detailed 3D modeling of jobs where it's much more complex, and you might have access limitations, or you might need to have mules and scaffold on different sides of walls, or we need extra mobility. Kind of giving the options and showing the layout of, hey, we have wheel carts, we have other, little pallet trucks we can use, fork trucks, other pieces of equipment we can use for mobility, and walking through those examples to determine what is the best option to give you the mobility you need on your project. And then we'll actually, we can take scaffold layouts that you have, and we can show you the examples of what mule setup would be optimal. When you put mules on a scaffold, there's really 3 ways you can put them on the scaffold. There's what we call the deck strap, which is shown on the left here. And you can see this deck strap configuration is the lightest weight way to put mules on the scaffold. It does clamp them directly down to the deck of the mast climber. And so that's really optimal if you're setting up and you're going vertical. But to remove them, you have to unclamp them, you have to remove them, or you have to disconnect a mast. We also can set mules up on the scaffold just on the ground base. And in that case, the weight of the ground base counterweights the mule. No issue. It doesn't need to be bolted down or really kind of locked down to the scaffold. However, it does take up a little more space and it is heavier. So now you have capacity constraints on that scaffold that need to be taken into account. And but the advantage of that is that to pick it off the scaffold and go set it on the ground is as easy as picking a mortar tub or a pallet of block and just moving it around. Go in, pick it, set it on the ground, start laying from the ground. So it's much easier from a move standpoint. And then the third option not shown here is now rail systems are becoming more and more available, and you can actually integrate mules with rail systems on the scaffold. So lots of different options, and I think that this is the type of pre-job discussion to say, hey, how much area do you need to cover? What's the number of people you want? What does the wall that you're building look like? Are there big openings? Are you trying to cover, large square footage? And then figure out what the best way to put the mules on the scaffold might look like. And then taking into account is like, do I run flat plank or drop plank, right? And these things, there's a lot of considerations to think about in either case. The advantages of running flat plank might be that the mason can easily step back and pick straight off the pallet of block. The advantages of the drop plank may be, there's other material that they need to be laying by hand, or there's other things they need to be laying by hand, and they want the advantage of the ergonomics of that. So there's a lot of things to consider when you kind of run that analysis. But if you think about it ahead of time and work with us to put that game plan together, then you'll kind of understand the pros and cons of that and can make the best decision for your job that you need. Production success plan. So from a production standpoint, like I said, we've seen very high levels of production. We've seen, good levels of production. We've seen mediocre levels of production. And so for us, a lot of what determines the success of production is kind of what do you want, right? Knowing how many block you want per day with your crew and planning it out. You know how to do this with your people because masons, this is how they make their living. And what we want to do is help educate you on how to factor the mules into that decision making and that thinking, right? So how can you use your crew differently when you put mules in place? If you have a wall that's got 500 block in it and you lay 250 and then you grout and then you lay 250 and you grout, well, how would you normally approach it? And how do you approach it with the mules? If you're doing manual work, that 60-foot, 8-foot high wall with 540 block, maybe you'd put 4 masons and 4 laborers, and they'd be spaced 15 feet apart. And maybe each mason lays 135 block, and you do 2 grouts in a day. You lay, you grout, you lay, you grout. And the laborers stage the block in the mortar, and that's the workflow that you're used to manually. Well, if you just drop mules up there with those 8 masons, you will not see productivity gains. You will not see efficiency. Your guys might feel good, but to get that third grout in a day would be incredibly challenging. And so, do you end up needing to have a second wall area set up? Or do you do that same wall with less people? You say, hey, I'm going to take half the crew and they're going to go do a second wall, or they're going to go prep another area. And in this case, I'm going to take four people, 3 masons and 1 laborer, and I'm going to space them 20 feet apart. And they each need to lay 180 block and 2 grouts in a day, lay, grout, and pick from the pallet and directly from the pallet so that we don't need as many laborers up there. The laborers don't need to stage the material. They can handle the mortar and help support the masons. That's the type of thinking and pre-planning that can achieve productivity gains and or economic efficiencies on these projects, or allow you to spread your crew out to get more of that project done in the same time. Another way to look at it might be to take an area of a scaffold and say, hey, if I got a 40-foot setup, I might take that same 40-foot wall and have 1 mason and 1 laborer supporting that whole 40-foot wall. In this case, what you see here is a picture of a scaffold with a rail system on it and a mule on top. And so in that case, you could take half of that 40-foot wall, build 20 feet up, 4 feet, 90 CMU, do that in less than a couple hours. And then you'd move to the right, slide it down, and that same mason lays 90 block on the right. Well, another team may come up and grout. And then you can kind of go back and forth. Another way to look at that same wall would be, hey, if I don't want a rail or have a rail available, I put 2 mules up there. And the same mason may do left, right, so that you can integrate grouting along with laying, and the mason can continuously be laying while we're grouting next to it. So considerations like that are what's important to allow you to keep the mule moving and keep the people operating in a more efficient manner maybe they didn't have in the past. So next is really the alignment of the men, the machines, the materials. And so when you think about the mule layout basics, right? The team, to look at your team, like how big of a team are you going to have on the job? What is your typical labor to mason ratio? And then how many mules do you need to align with that team, depending on how much square footage or how much wall area you want to tackle at one shot. The machines is really thinking about not just the mules, but what other equipment are you going to need to hit the productivity targets that you want to hit? Are you going to need another telehandler? Do you need more mixers? Do you need grout houses? Do you need grout pumps? Do you need things like that that will help you get other things done faster, because you're expecting to put more square footage every day. And that's whether you're laying 12-inch block or you're laying 32-inch block. But it especially matters if you're laying 32-inch block, because you can put block in the wall so much faster. You need to really think about the overall things you need on that job to be successful. And then, mules, how many mules? Typical mule is set about 20 to 25 feet apart, depending on, how they're mounted to the deck. Potentially, if there's rails, it could be a little bit further. And then how mobile do they need to be? Do you need to lay 4 feet here and then jump to another scaffold to lay another 4 feet? Do I need to pick the mules during the day and move them from point A to point B? Do I have frame scaffolding and I need to put the mules on a mobile base on a scissor lift on the other side of the wall so they can move from point A to point B very quickly and easily? All of these are considerations that will determine success or really struggle on a job site with the mules. But thankfully, I think we have enough experience to be able to make good recommendations on how to approach that. And then the scaffold, how do you optimize the layout of the scaffold with the mules together? So thinking about, if you go with long bridges or long wings, does that reduce capacity and therefore the mules can't reach out that far? So are you better off with shorter setups, but more motor units? And some of those considerations, depending on the scaffold you have, what your team is comfortable operating within, or job site constraints, and that all needs to be factored when you think about how the mules are going to be applied there. And then the material, this is a huge piece, is how the material is staged next to the mule. The most optimal way that we've seen is when you can set the pallets of block right next to the mule, pick straight off the pallet. It reduces double handling, it saves the backs and bodies of the laborers, and it allows you to be more efficient with just going from pallet to wall. But there's jobs where that can't happen. And you need to think about the landing zones of the material. We need to think about how to move material throughout scaffold. And if there is one landing spot, how you're going to get heavy materials from point A to point B without just kind of, killing your people. The mules can actually be an asset there. They could be helpful in staging if you needed to stage, with that 20-foot reach, you can stage the block in one spot, and potentially the laborers could use the mule to stage out the block if needed. So there's a lot of options that become available, but thinking about material flow and understanding the material flow is one of the key elements to success with the mule. If your material is the bottleneck, if it's the constraint, if it's the choke point in the process, then you're just not going to see any productivity gains. All right, other job site considerations. We touched on some of these, but a pallet of block near each mule reduces the double handling, like I talked about. In this case, with the MLs, they do have generators, so you'd want to place them, on a mount to free up deck space. In the MZ, you don't need that. In this image here, they put the long hooks on the front of the deck and the short hooks on the back. They had constraints relative to how far away from the wall, so they went to a single plank setup, moving the scaffold closer to the wall and putting the long hooks in the front, which essentially moves the mules to the back of the scaffold. Giving a little more walk space in the front. It does reduce the width that the mule can handle. So in that case, it maybe is only handling 18 feet of wall, not 22 feet of wall. But you just need to factor that in when you plan it out ahead of time. And then, and you can see on the right, they were able to move the mule to the front over here to give a little bit more wall area coverage, but then you end up in a scenario where you don't have as much walking space in front of the mule. So all of these are important considerations, but things that can be looked at, and really the details of understanding how to apply mules to your project. So it's not as simple as just kind of, drop them and go, but let's think of a game plan to make them successful. And that's really what our job planning exercises go through. A couple other tips along the way, and some of these I've covered, but just to kind of reiterate, the mule placement 20 feet apart, plan ahead on how you want to relocate. Am I picking them and moving them a couple times a day? Am I just leaving them there? Do I have more mules? Do I need rail systems? All of those things need to be thought about. And then if you're moving them from point A to point B, do I have a base ready and all I'm doing is disconnecting it at the mast? So it's just 4 bolts from point A to point B, or am I moving the whole setup with it? And then, are there other mobility options that I prefer? Instead of putting the mules on the scaffold, do I put them on a roof? Do I put them on scissor lifts on the other side of the wall? Do I put them on, some other piece of equipment to give me the mobility I need so that I can quickly move them from point A to point B multiple times a day? And then block staging, pull directly off the pallet. We talked about that. Spacing out pallets so they can be efficiently accessed by the masons. And then consider planking out deck height to provide easy walking to go get the block. And then tenders feed the mortar boards at multiple stations and not the blocks, right? The whole idea is you don't want to, you want to pick off the pallets and then avoid moving blocks more than one time. And then 2 men per mule max. We obviously see 1 man per mule in many instances. You see 2 man per mule in many instances. And I'll show you a video at the end that kind of touches on some of that. But avoid the temptation to just put additional bodies at it because that typically does not result in more efficiency. And typical method that is pretty high productivity, high throughput is one mason grabs it, one person grabs the block directly from the pallet, butters the end, and moves it right to the wall, while the second mason focuses on pre-bedding the mortar, tooling the joints, and basically focusing on wall quality. That process can be very efficient, but it's not the only one that has yielded results. And then high lift grouting is also an important factor to consider. If you have to stop for grouting, it does require mules to move more. If you can move towards high lift grouting and get those approvals, then it does minimize the mule moves, and it leverages sustained higher rates of installation. Okay, number 4, mindset and on-site buy-in. And this tends to be an obstacle in many cases, right? If the mules show up and the team is not bought in and really understanding what the mule is about, why it's there can be fear. There can be, I think frustration because they just feel like it's another thing they need to figure out and they're not sure of the value. So ensuring the team understands the expectation for production and why you're utilizing the mules, safety, productivity, schedule, whatever it is that's driving you to use the mules on the job. We highly recommend that kind of buy-in with the team is critical. And if we could do that ahead of time, off-site, that's a great way to do it because people can get their hands on the product, understand it, and be successful with it without the pressure of job site production. And then the other thing is, find your mule champion and get them trained, right? So that mule champion can go a long ways. When the first few days, first weeks that we're on site with your team, training, working with them, we can help make sure that everyone is up to speed, but having that mule champion that understands the vision of where you want to go with the mules and supports the team and supports the kind of the overall buy-in over time is going to be critical. And then the foreman, really make sure the foreman's on board that this will make their life easier, not harder. I think initially having to learn new tools on a job that has to be executed under tight time pressures or schedules or with challenging general contractors can be a burden on the foreman, and that's the last thing we want. So making sure that we work with the foreman ahead of time is key. And then your challenge is really keeping the block and mortar flowing to the masons throughout the day. If you want more production, you got to plan for it. You got to keep that mule moving. And then, just to clarify a couple things, to make sure the team understands that the mule is not a block lane machine that places blocks for the mason. It's a tool to make their lives better, to take strain off their backs and to allow them to continually produce day in and day out and feel better at the end of the day. At the end of the, that's what we take a ton of pride in, is that the masons that tell us they feel better at the end of the day and go home and can lift their kids up or go grocery shopping with their wife. I think that the better work-life balance there, not taking a toll on your body, just means a ton for us. So prolonged health and safety. Okay, last point that we'll talk about with the mule method is this continuous improvement. So once you're on the job and you get the right buy-in with the team and everyone's trained and they understand what it's all about, day one, you're not going to see the productivity you want, right? Most likely you're going to lay, you're going to put a bunch of block in, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a bunch of ups and downs, good days and bad days. With the MZ, we have this beautiful IoT data, which really is the data from the mule, the grips, the lifts, the amount of weight, the data, the information from the mule is pushed to the cloud. We can review it, we can monitor it, we can share it with the customers. And so, if you're using MZs or you want to use MZs, work with us on the data, because we can use that data to identify downtimes and opportunities for reducing those downtimes. Production increases are one in the downtimes. When you think about installing block throughout the day, there's only so much you can do to install block faster. If a mule and a mason can lay 100 block in an hour, maybe it's between 50 and 150, but you're not going to lay 400 block in an hour. It's just not where the win happens. The win happens in being able to lay, instead of 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, laying 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And so CR can provide help reviewing the data and understanding what those downtimes are and coaching. But at the end of the day, it's the foreman, the people on site, understanding what their mission is and what they're trying to accomplish, where we get the biggest wins. And we can give you examples of that. This is actual data from a job where, again, they laid for a couple hours in the morning, put 150 block in the wall, had some downtime, obviously breaks or whatnot, laid for a couple hours, put another 200 block in the wall, had some downtime, laid, had some downtime. And this is a phenomenal day from a production standpoint. Obviously not all days are like this, but I think that they can be. And there's, even in this scenario where you have a phenomenal day, there is downtime that can be looked at to say, hey, what is realistic? And in many jobs, what you see is you'll see an hour or two of 100 to 200 blocks going in, and then long downtimes. Because again, if the job is not planned out, if there's other things that the masons need to be doing, they got to move over and they got to do something else. And again, if the goal of the day is to put 150 block in the wall, you might be able to do that in an hour and a half, and then the rest of the day is dealing with other challenging aspects of the project. Then that's just the way it is. But the MULE can help make that make those 150 blocks go smoother and more efficient. Or the MULE can be moved to another area where then they can actually lay more block. So what is possible, I think, from our standpoint, as we talk to our contractors, what's possible is happier crews, healthier crews, lower turnover, higher production, and ultimately higher profits. And this is an example of a job where I would say this contractor has learned how to manufacture walls. And if you look at just these 80-pound sound wall block going in, they built an assembly line, right? They built a process where the laborer or the mason, basically puts the heads on the block, loads them up, comes straight off of the staged material, grabs that block, hands it to the person, and then the other masons, they're installing it in the wall. And in this case, they're putting block in the wall at about a pace of 200 block an hour, so 5 blocks in a minute 30. Now, whether they achieve 200 block an hour, 8 hours a day, I doubt. But if you're putting 200 block in the wall, it doesn't take a lot of hours of high rate production to achieve pretty significant results, especially when you're talking an 80-pound block. Doing it with a MULE versus doing it by hand can be a game changer. So for us, the greatest success with the MULE is kind of found in two pieces: the planning and the attitude. And the best thing we could say is we can absolutely help with the planning. We cover attitude and training and educating the team, but at the end of the day, they got to want to buy in and see results. But we can help with planning. We encourage you to schedule a job review with CR today. There's a link there. You can click on the link, and we're happy to help. And we've seen unbelievable success. We've been on just tons and tons of projects around the country, all sorts of different materials, all sorts of different projects. So we love the opportunity to just review projects with you, talk about what makes sense, and look for opportunities to try mules out, do demos, rent, or purchase. So that's what I have. I'm going to open it up. If there are any questions, happy to address that. If not, then we can wrap up. I don't want to take any more of your time than needed, but I really appreciate you coming out and learning about the MULE method and how we can help you achieve greater production and safety on your job sites.